Hello everyone. My Lester video is taking a bit more time to make than I had thought. So, I'm making this video which starts a series of videos based around a game of Pathfinder that later converts to 5e that I'm running. Please remember to like and subscribe to help my channel grow, and if you want to keep up with new videos and posts, turn on your notifications for my channel. The Children of Lost Bloodlines is a campaign I've started on Pathfinder 1st Edition that later transfers into 5th Edition Dungeons & Dragons. I will be making videos of the story as it happens. We start with Session 0. This session started with me explaining that for now, they were only picking their races of their characters and their names. I want to point out before I get started that one of my players came to me with the Mestrel race that had with the Mestrel race, a race he had created himself, and I allowed as it wasn't too broken with its racials. The Mestrel in this world are half-demon descendants of the elven hero Mestrel, cursed by the god Lamia for killing the priest in one of her temples. His curse continued through his bloodline and usually marks them as having a strange eye color along with the wings of one kind of creature and the tail of a different kind of creature, sharing only the color but not the form. While the main body takes the attributes of the non-Mestrel parent. If both parents are Mestrel, then the body could take the shape of either of the parents. While the wings come from one parent, the tail comes from the other. Mestrels, because of their history, are often confused with demons and for that reason are sometimes ostracized. This, coupled with their ancestry, makes them have a natural yearning for adventure and a place they can truly call a home. Dawn breaks in the morning. The rays of the eastern sun shone through the windows of the orphanage. It sat in the clearing of green grass in a forest with a stream a little ways to the west. The building itself faced south, with 2 windows on the east side and a window on the west, north and south sides. Belthias the Mestrel slowly sat up from his dreamy-eyed sleep, his unkempt, forest-green hair flowing down his back, his wings seemingly extending out of his hair as his monkey-like tail extended from the base of his hips. In the bed next to him, his brother, Hessta, Yihiss, was yawning and slipping his scaly form out of his bed. Torolf was also stirring now, his bulky orcish frame casting a dark shadow over the wall. The Knoll twins, Hacker and Slasher, were also getting out of bed for the morning. Looking around the room, Belthias saw Gobby, next to the youngest of his siblings, already walking to the table, and Basket, yawning, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Each of them sat at the table with a hot plate of food in front of them. They waited patiently for their father, Foster, an old human man who was kindly and took care of the orphans every day without complaint. Sitting down with them, the group began their breakfast. Hessta did not start eating right away and looked down at the floor blushing. "What's wrong, Hessta? Aren't you hungry? Or maybe the cat has your tongue," Belthias teased, mocking Hesta's hissed accent that belied his race. Hessta just blushed again and spoke. "I was just trying to find a way to thank Father. That's all," he replied sheepishly before starting his meal. Belthias smirked and continued eating. Hessta knew the Mestrel was just having some fun, as the two had arrived within a week of each other, just a couple years prior. Now, Belthias, let Hessta eat. There's no need for your teasing games, said Foster. Besides, I need to assign you all chores for the day, he continued. Hessta, Hacker, and Slasher were sent to the kitchen to prepare the food for lunch for cooking. Toroff and Belthias were assigned the task of chopping the wood for the day. Gobby was to help Foster with the food stores, and Basket was made to take a warm bath that had been prepared for her. Hacker set different vegetables and meats on different plates before handing them to Hessta. Hessta would chop and slice them accordingly before handing them to Slasher, who would stage the prepared food to be cooked. After placing the last plate of prepared food, the twins stood side by side in front of Hessta. All done, they said to him. We should get reward, said Hacker. Yes, reward, continued Slasher. Looking over to his right, Hessta saw 2 large chunks of steak, neatly and conveniently set aside, and had not been set with the rest of the food. The 2 gnolls licked and smacked their chops, trying to keep the drool from spilling on the floor. We need to share this food for all of us. Otherwise, someone might not get enough, Hessta scolded them. The twins lowered their heads, looking positively ashamed. Hacker went and took the 2 pieces that he had set aside and put them with the rest of the meat. After which the 3 of them went outside to find Foster. Turning up the eastern wall, the 3 started towards the small storage room Foster had built for food. They passed by Basket, who was splashing with glee inside the stone bath constructed for the children. Gobby stood sweating from working with Foster. The storage room had been hot and stuffy. When Foster said he could help Basket get out of the tub before going to play out in the grass, he was ecstatic. Elsewhere, Toroff and Belthias walked up to the large pile of logs and limbs that needed to be cut and split. So, Toroff, do you remember much about your family before coming here? Asked Belthias. Toroff grunted as he chopped through a log and stood again, nodding as he looked into the trees, but seeming as if he were looking somewhere else. I remember, he said. My tribe was the Orcs of the Red Eye. We attacked, killed, stole, and took every advantage we could think of. We were strong, and so we could do what we wanted. Then the people came and killed us to the very last, burned our tents, and destroyed us completely. I ran as I was too scared to die, he continued, looking down somberly. So your people didn't think that they were evil? Asked Belthias, having never heard this story from Toroff before. We knew, he replied soberly. Foster took me in after that, showed me that there was more to life than what my tribe had done, showed me pain caused by their actions. I know there is a better way, and I owe it to other orcs to try to teach them as well. Belthias stopped to consider Toroff's feelings on this. With his wings folded in and his tail tucked away in his breeches, he wondered if he might one day do that for members of his own race. Belthias had been brought to Foster by his mother. He never knew his father, but his mother had been kidnapped by a major demon of some repute, whom Belthias had never met. The demon had ordered his mother to sacrifice Belthias to him, so that he might take her into his harem before he went into hiding. After that, he wasn't sure what happened to his parents. Most of the current residents were already at the orphanage when he arrived there, save for Hessta, who showed up in the stream to the west, a week later, wounded and unconscious. Foster is good human, said Torolf, breaking the silence. Showed me that there was good humans and bad humans. Showed me that if you are good, you will be shown to be good after a long time, he finished. Well, these logs aren't going to cut themselves, said Belthias, wanting to give his older brother a chance to think about their discussion before continuing it, and not wanting to talk about his own history himself. Hessta and the Knoll twins walked up then, smiling and offering their help. What? Did the three of you eat all the food already? Belthias taunted. No! Both twins barked back. Stop this, commanded Torolf. We are family now. We have to look out for each other. If we fight, then we let others fall because we refuse to help from the anger of our fighting. Not so, said Hacker. Hessta got all the food ready fast. Yes, very fast, agreed Slasher. At first, Torolf thought he was finally being heard, but he rolled his eyes when it became clear that he was in fact being ignored. After a few moments of pause, the work continued. Torolf let the others take turns and made sure that they were chopping properly so that they didn't hurt themselves. An hour passed, and they finished the wood chopping. Looking over the piles, Torolf picked up 5 straight pieces. He had purposely cut in a way that would be of use for what he had planned next. The past couple of months, the orphanage had been routinely visited by a less than friendly human who made no attempt to hide his disdain for the residents, to which he referred to as evil, monstrous beasts that would eventually break free and cause terrible problems due to their higher-than-average intelligences. This man had not been back in more than a week, and Basket had come to the orphanage since his last visit. Since there were more accommodating visitors every so often, Torolf was concerned with what trouble a drow elf might bring, regardless of her age. Come with me, said Torolf, as he led the small group into the forest behind the orphanage. Torolf spent the next hour showing his younger brothers how to make crude stone weapons. Why would we need these? Asked Hessta. In case you ever find yourself alone and without help, you have to have ways to survive, lied Torolf. In truth, he knew it was only a matter of time before the belligerent man became violent, and they would need to protect themselves from the man and anyone that might take up his cause. After 2 hours, Hessta produced a spear for himself, while Belthias made an axe. The Knoll twins each made a sword. The Knoll twins each made a short sword. Nodding at their work, Torolf led them back home in a different way from which they had come. They walked over to a small lift in the land covered with dead leaves, and Torolf revealed a secret cache of hidden weapons he had made. Long swords, short swords, and clubs mostly. Hide your weapons here, and get them if you ever venture out of our home, Torolf told them. One by one, they slipped their weapons into the cache, before Torolf quietly lowered the camouflage top down and started back home. Upon arriving home, they were greeted with plates full of food. Welcome back. Did you have fun playing in the woods? Foster asked. We did. We wrestled and played tiny war games, Torolf lied. Not understanding why, but trusting their older brother, The group sat around the table, not saying a word of what had truly transpired. Everyone started eating lunch. About halfway through the meal, there was a loud banging at the door. Foster rose and told the children to continue eating. Then Foster slid his chair back as the banging came again before Foster slipped out the door. Hearing a loud yelling from outside, Hessta slipped out of his sitting position and slithered his way over to the door and listened quietly.
I have heard about you keeping that dark-skinned demon inside. Give me the girl,
the man shouted. You know I'm not going to do that, Foster calmly replied. Another muffled shout came as Hessta slithered back over to Basket and whispered,
Let's play hide and seek,
he said. Basket nodded enthusiastically and stepped out of her chair and started towards the door, waving his hands to inform her to stop and whispering, inside. She shook her head. It's not allowed.
I'll take up for you. Now hide,
he said, covering his eyes and counting. Looking everywhere, Basket quietly hid herself underneath Foster's bed and slid her way into the darkest corner, letting her ebony skin conceal her form. Hessta opened his eyes, looking around, noticing that Basket was well out of sight. The Knoll twins, however, were clearly not privy to what was going on, as they both pointed at Foster's bed openly. Shaking his head, Hessta motioned for the twins to put their arms down, while another series of shouts could be heard from outside. He told Gobby to hide Basket's plate of food, and he quickly did so before coming back, and all the boys were seated when the man kicked in the door and stormed into the single-room building. The man glared and stalked slowly around the room.
These beasts will just be evil like their parents before them, and their parents before them. Killing them would spare us all time and pain,
the man roared boldly. If you speak in such a manner about my children again, I will kill you, Foster replied, with an undeniable certainty.
This isn't over, Foster. These children will just become monsters that they are as soon as they get old enough,
the man said, making sure he didn't threaten them again before storming out and back into the forest from where he had come. After making sure he was gone, Hessta pulled Basket from her hiding place and stayed with her until after she had finished eating. The rest of the afternoon was uneventful, and the children played after cleaning. That evening, Foster set up a small campfire. And seats for his children. Torolf sat across from Foster. To his left was Hessta, who was coiled up into a seat with Basket relaxing in his coils. Next to him was Belthias, who sat to Foster's right. Gobby sat to Foster's left, and beside him were the two Knoll twins. I thought I might tell you a story tonight, Foster told them.
We haven't heard a story in a long time,
said Belthias, as the others nodded in agreement and excitement. Foster smiled and waited for everyone to calm down, as they waited for him to begin. There once was a great hero who had shiny armor and a tall shield and a long sword. This hero went on many great adventures and found good friends along the way. When the hero came home, he vowed to protect his land no matter the cost. One day, a dragon came to the land. The dragon was fierce and wrathful. It burned all the fields. It cursed all the crops. And it ate all the cattle. The hero would not stand to see his home defiled so. And thus, the hero put on his shiny armor, picked up his long sword, and hefted his tall shield. The hero walked out to face the dragon and was met by the friends the hero had made along the way. The friends would not let their trusted and honored friend go into this battle alone. Together, they went to fight the mighty dragon. The dragon saw the companions and laughed. "Who are you to try to fight me?" it asked. "My claws are like daggers, my teeth are as swords, and my scales are harder than any shield. What hope do you have to live after fighting me?" the dragon bellowed. The hero stood tall and brave, and knew that this was the end. "I have no hope, but I give hope to others. I am a hero, and thus, if I do not fight you, who will?" said the hero. And so they fought, and the dragon was slain, and the hero was slain. But after a period of time, the land grew back. The crops were cured, and the cattle returned. The hero saved the land so that their courage might one day give others courage to be heroes as well. The campfire flickered in the reflection of the children's eyes as they listened, recognizing the sacrifice the hero had made for everyone else and bringing forth a feeling of wanting to be more than what they were. "Come now, it's time for bed," stated Foster. Quietly, the children stood up and the campfire was put out before they went back into the house. Foster let them get tucked into their own beds and checked each one before wishing them good night and climbing into his own bed. Nearly an hour later, all the children were asleep, and Foster rose from his bed and went to the storage closet. He came out a few minutes later, wearing a red robe and carrying a staff with a crystal ball at the top. The ball had a sky blue hue to it and was the shape of a pearl. Quietly, trying to keep from breaking the slumber of his precious children, Foster walked out of the orphanage. Belthias and Hessta awoke to the flickering light of what they at first thought was a campfire. However, this orange light came from the front of the orphanage and not the back. Quickly, the two got out of bed and started to wake up the other children. Soon, they all heard the shouts and sounds of fighting from outside.
"Get to the back window, open it, and get everyone out,"
Torolf told Belthias.
"Get some weapons. We have to help Foster,"
he continued. Belthias ran to the window, opening it in a rush. Hessta slithered through first, followed by Basket and Gaudy. Next, Hacker and Slasher climbed through and helped Belthias out before the three of them ran to the hidden cache. Opening the camouflage top, Belthias, Hacker, and Slasher grabbed 3 swords and an axe. Running back, Belthias handed a sword to Torolf and climbed back in through the window. The twins began sneaking around the eastern wall then.
"You should have run back to the woods,"
Torolf yelled in frustration, running towards the door. "I wasn't going to let you go off and fight alone," Belthias shouted back. They both ran to the front door, with Torolf protectively in front. The door swung wide, and Torolf took 2 steps out, and with 3 resounding thunk sounds, collapsed in a heap in front of Belthias. Time seemed to slow down to Belthias, pulling with a firm grip on Torolf's hand, trying to get him back into the orphanage. He felt another thunk and looked down to see an arrow had pierced Torolf's heart, the arrowhead sticking out of his back as the heat and grip of Torolf's hand slowly faded away. Foster, fighting 2 men in melee, turned and swept one man's feet out from under him. Using his momentum, he smashed his arcane focus that topped his staff into the other man's face, crunching cartilage and cracking bone. The archer at the edge of the wood was knocking another arrow when a bolt of blue lightning rolled in, smacking the man in the chest, sending him flying back into the darkness. "Run!" Foster yelled at Belthias, who was already in full flight towards the tree line to the west. Hessta gripped Basket's hand with his left, and Gobby's hand with his right. He could hear the fighting and whistling of arrows in the air. However, what terrified him the most was the baying of the hunting dogs ahead that were steadily getting closer. He partly dragged his two younger siblings along, trying to keep them safe from harm. He felt Gobby's hand slip from his, and he turned around, and Basket was gone. But how did her hand slip free without him noticing? Knowing he had to go back for her, he turned to Gobby, who was trying to run to him, but was too exhausted to make any real difference. Then, in the blink of an eye, a hunting dog came out of the bushes, sinking his teeth into Gobby's neck. All Hessta could see in that moment was the terrified look on Gobby's face, his eyes filled with a knowing terror that his young life was about to end. With a crunch that was painful to hear, and the rustling as the dog leaped away, Gobby was gone. Hesta's world came back to him in a rush as suddenly the baying was much closer than it had been before. Dashing back to the orphanage, his thoughts only on survival, he leapt over logs and moved with all speed towards the stream. A rustle in the bushes caught his attention as Basket leaped out of it and into Hesta's arms. Catching her, he continued his mad rush into the stream. Then, moving quietly up the cold current, the two spotted a familiar face. Belthias ran as fast as his legs would carry him, as an arrow flew by. Unfurling his emerald eagle-like wings, he flew into the night sky, twisting this way and that to avoid arrows. Flying in an erratic pattern, he finally fell into the stream. Looking over from his hidden position, Belthias let out a sigh of relief, seeing Hessta and Basket looking down at him from upstream. Together, they quietly moved upstream and into the trees. As they turned and looked at their home, in the distance, silhouettes moved in front of a flame-lit stage, black forms on an orange canvas. The twins were brought out from behind their home. Foster turned and saw them. He was no longer a powerful wizard. Gone was the skillful fighter. He was simply a father, pleading for the lives of his children. Hessta covered Basket's eyes and turned her away. Out from the tree line came a form behind Foster, stalking in confidently and taking its sword. It drove its sword through Foster's chest. He staggered once and fell to his knees as the other men slit the throats of the twins, Foster's body falling along with them as the men began burning the orphanage to the ground. Shouts and calls for the drow girl and the other beasts were called, but the three remaining children remained hidden throughout all the night. At this point, I told my players they could make any class and use any background, but that this was their origin, and it would be used in the campaign. I certainly hope you've all enjoyed Session 0 of Children of the Lost Bloodlines. If you enjoy this, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you, and have a pleasant day.